Hello and welcome to the show that gives you an insight into the most important issues of the day. This is the big picture. The two main contenders for the post of president filed their nomination papers before the returning officer for the polls. Today, the UPA candidate Pranab Mukherjee filed his nomination papers first, followed by Purno Sangma, the NDA candidate. Rajya Sabha television followed the entire process and brought you live updates throughout the day. Pranab Mukherjee came in with UPA chairperson Sonia Gandhi as well as the Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh, along with allies and supporters from various political parties. Allies like Mulayam Singh Yadav and Farooq Abdullah were also present as well. Not to be outdone, Mr. Sangma came in with an entourage of senior NDA functionaries including L.K. Advani, Sushma Swaraj, Arun Jaitley and Prakash Singh Badal. The BJD's Naveen Patnaik proposed Mr. Sangma's name. On the big picture tonight, however, our focus will be the process and the procedure of how India's president is elected. We, of course, will touch upon the developments of the day, but our effort today will be to give our viewers, you, a better sense of the technicalities of the election. We'll also touch upon the role that the Electoral College plays, as well as discuss the different weightage assigned to votes coming in from different states. And joining me on the show tonight will be PDT Achari, former Secretary General of the Rajya Sabha. Remember, the Secretary General of the Rajya Sabha is the returning officer for the presidential polls. Also joining us is S.K. Ganguly, Joint Secretary of the Rajya Sabha. Parsa Venkateshwar Jr., editorial consultant with DNA newspaper, will also be joining us. And in just a bit, KV Prasad, associate editor of the Tribune, will also connect with us. Welcome to the show. Gentlemen, I'd like to start the show with you, Parsa, if I could. Let's start with the developments of the day. The two main contenders filed their nomination papers. The last date is June 30th. So the scrutiny will happen on the 2nd of July. Did the visual imagery that played out today with Pranab Da coming in with a huge contingent of powerful supporters in an entourage that was really powerful as well, and Mr. Sangma trying to replicate it with the NDA as well. Was that, in your opinion, just public posturing, given the fact that calculations at this point suggest that the UPA candidate just might have an edge numerically over the other one?
I think on the face of it, Mr. Pranab Mukherjee and the UPA have overwhelming edge, not just an edge. But not to be outdone, because this is a contest and everyone has to put in their best. I think Mr. Purno Sangma, he's doing his best.
Right.
And perhaps the BJP and the other allies have turned up to give him their support. Though I think more or less the outcome is known. I mean, it's futile to pretend that it's going to be very close.
Well, it's not my job to speculate, but let's take that point as a fair point. So if I could come to you, Mr. Achari, like I said before, we're not discussing the political give and take behind the presidential polls. But before we go on to the process of the election, I'd like to ask you one simple question. Do you think there will be surprises, some surprises for everyone, for you and me and the public as well, on the day of the voting? Or do you expect MPs and MLAs largely to toe their respective party lines?
Well, I don't think there will be any surprises, because as of today, things are very clear. Now, the UPA has about 6.3 lakh votes. You know, in this presidential election, the total votes are 10,98,882. And you know that in order to win, one must have 50% plus one.
Right.
So I think the outcome is predictable. It's known, in fact, I must say that it's known. So I don't expect any kind of surprises at the last minute. Of course, it is the secret ballot, that is true, but still I think the support for each candidate is very well known.
Right.
And it has been firmed up.
Right. Even though Mr. Sangma was there when he gave that little bite outside the returning officer's office today, and he said that I would appeal to the conscience of the voters since it is a secret ballot. But do you think that won't play a big part?
Well, he is a candidate and he has filed his nominations. Naturally, a candidate cannot be expected to say that he will lose, and therefore, you know, that kind of thing is not expected of him. He is a candidate, he is in the field. Now, he has to certainly, naturally, it is his duty to see that he wins.
Absolutely. Let me come to you, sir, for a bit. You, of course, mentioned as well, you are assistant returning officer as well for these polls for the benefit of our viewers. And I can't claim to be an expert on the subject of presidential polls. My knowledge, of course, is also very limited. That's why I come to you for this question. For the benefit of our viewers and everyone else, I'll start with the basic question. If my understanding is correct, anyone over the age of 35 years who has no criminal record and manages to get 50 signatures to propose his name and 50 more to second his name can run, can file his nomination papers for the president of the country. Is that correct?
Yeah. Actually, the requirement is, as the law provides, that when a person comes to file a nomination paper, he should attach with that nomination paper certified copy of the electoral roll in which he is a parliamentary registered elector in that parliamentary constituency, then 15,000 rupees and 50 proposers and 50 seconders. And as you are aware, electoral college consists of the members of parliament and the elected members of the legislative assemblies, including NCT of Delhi and Union Territory of Puducherry.
Right.
So these are the requirement.
Right.
Anybody furnishing these will be through.
Absolutely. And we saw some, I was there outside when the two main candidates came in. There were some other candidates also who I was told come almost every time a presidential election happens. And one of them, of course, very famous, Mr. Dharti Pagad, as he's called. We see a lot of this, sir, outside in Western countries as well, especially in the US. People who have absolutely no chance, a shot at going to the president's post, do exercise their the democratic right and run for the elections as well. We see a lot of this in the US as well, random candidates as they're called. I saw a list outside Route 29, which is the current Secretary General's office, and I saw a total of 40 names till date. Remember, there are 2 more days to go till the last date. 40 names have already applied. Do you just see that as democracy at work?
Actually, today it has gone up. It is now 51.
Right.
It's now latest is 51. Figure is latest. Now, I have seen mostly they are non-serious candidates. They just come for publicity. And they are not serious about the contest. They just simply they have come for publicity. So because they do not have the proposers, seconders, and that is vital.
Right.
So that is not there.
So we can also call it, like someone else told me in the afternoon, that this is democracy, the virtue of democracy, that virtually anyone over the age of 35 and has no criminal record can exercise the right and run for such a high post. Let me go to KV Prasad, who's just joined us, associate editor at the Tribune. Sir, a while back I was asking my guests in the studio that speculating really is not our job, and we're not really focusing on the politics behind, the give and take behind what goes on the presidential polls, but asking you, and I'll repeat the question that I asked my guests in the studio as well. Do you see the big show of strength by the 2 main candidates, Pranab Mukherjee and Purno Sangma today, coming with the respective camps, the NDA and the UPA? Was that just public posturing, given the fact that the numerical advantage lies heavily with the UPA candidate?
No, more than public posture, it's a demonstration to the people and to the electorate of the Electoral College as to where the political lines are drawn. To that extent, I think it is a very anticipated show. Of course, if you really notice, when the UPA candidate, sponsored candidate, Mr. Pranab Mukherjee went, 2 important people or important supporting parties, whether it was the CPIM in particular, which had endorsed his candidature, none of their representatives were at least conspicuous.
Right.
They were conspicuous by their absence. And if you look at the other side, we really don't know which way, if Mr. Sangma has got the endorsement or not from Trinamool Congress.
Right.
So these were the 2 things. The interesting aspect of this election, if one may notice, when the name of Mr. Pranab Mukherjee came out, there has been a split in all 3 alliances. The BJP-led alliance, the Congress-led alliance, and also the left alliances. In the sense, the left, the CPI and RSP disagreed with the other 2 parties in supporting Mr. Mukherjee.
Right.
You have in Trinamool, of course, walking out, saying that doesn't agree with Mr. Mukherjee. And then you have within the NDA camp, the JDU, which decided to back Mr. Mukherjee, not agreeing with Mr. Sangma. So this is probably a unique kind of a situation where you have across the board some kind of, that is where probably Mr. Sangma is calculating.
Right.
And
right, Mr. Prasad. Point taken. We'll come back to you in just a bit. I would like to ask Parsa one question before something that he mentioned, Mr. K.V. Prasad mentioned, is the Trinamool's position is sort of ambiguous right now. After Pranab Mukherjee came out, after finding his nominations, he spoke to us for a bit, and he, in his magnanimity, appealed to people who haven't even supported him to come out and support him. And that, of course, shows the stature and the stature of the person contesting the polls. When Mr. Sangma came out, he said very interestingly that the Trinamool's body language should say it all. Where do you see the Trinamool going anyway? Do you think, as some people have said, the best choice for the Trinamool is to abstain?
One of the options Trinamool is considering is that of abstaining, so that their position in UPA is safe. If they were to vote against the UPA candidate, the political fallout would be that they may have to walk out of the UPA. To avoid that kind of an exigency, I think they may exercise the choice of abstaining.
Do you agree with that, sir? Do you think the Trinamool could go either way or perhaps just abstain?
Well, it is difficult for me to say what they will do, but I would rather agree with
Parsa.
Parsa and
right.
So
right.
Beyond that, I do not want to say anything.
Right, right. That's true. I think we're digressing a little bit. We should go into the procedure right now. We'll take a small break right now. We'll come back and we'll have more for you. Earlier in the day, I spoke to Dr. V.K. Agnihotri, who's the returning officer for these polls, as well as the Secretary General, current Secretary General of the Rajya Sabha. But that's after the break. Don't go anywhere. Keep watching The Big Picture. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're still watching The Big Picture. Earlier in the day, like I mentioned, I spoke to the returning officer of these current polls, Dr. V.K. Agnihotri. Take a look at what he had to say about the difficulties in running an election so big. The Secretary General of the Rajya Sabha, also the returning officer for the presidential election and the polls that are about to happen. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us and talking to Rajya Sabha Television. My first question, sir, of course, Pranab Mukherjee, the UPA candidate, just came to your office and they submitted their nominations. Walk us through what happened. Really, apparently there are 4 sets of nominations that have been filed from the UPA side.
Yes, 4 nominations have been filed. One by Srimati Sonia Gandhi, another by Shri Motilal Vora, and 2 others by Shri Pranab Mukherjee himself.
Particular question that I wanted to ask you, of course, was that the process of handling the elections and handling the counting of the electoral rolls, how big a process is it for the viewers of Rajya Sabha Television? If you could tell us how difficult a process it is, and how much of your staff is involved, and what are the basic requirements that you have to give your instructions to your staff?
Well, at one level, it is the most important election. It is the election for the highest position in the country. So that has its own aura. At another level, it is an election in which 30 states and union territories total put together are involved. So it is a bit of a logistic headache, because you have to collect all the ballot boxes from all over the country and bring them here and ensure their safe passage and storage and all that. That is one complication. Another complication is that even though there are only approximately 5,000 members of the Electoral College, but for different states there are different weightages for votes. For instance, the MP's vote is equal to 708. For UP, it is 208, and for some states of the northeast like Nagaland, Mizoram, Sikkim, it is 7 or 8. So counting them in this manner and calculating them, naturally it is an exercise which takes a little bit of time, and one has to be very careful in terms of sorting of the various ballot papers and putting them in the right slots, right boxes, so that when you calculate you are not making any mistakes. So it has to be, it's a very intense exercise.
There you go. V.K. Agnihotri, the returning officer of these polls, had a chat with me earlier in the day. So a very interesting point that Mr. Agnihotri also mentioned, coming to the process of the election itself now, what is the next step now after the returning officer examines the papers, and that's going to happen on the 2nd of July? Give our viewers a sense of what will unfold procedure-wise, any developments that we should look out for.
Actually, after the scrutiny, it will be known who are the contesting candidates, and once it is known, then we will publish it in the Gazette, and then on the before the day of polling, 19th is the day of polling, we will be getting the ballot papers from the election commissions, and similarly different AROs of different states, they will also be getting. The color, as you are aware, it's different.
Right.
So far as MPs are concerned, it is green color, and in the assemblies it will be pink color.
Right.
And the members will be intimated their numbers and all that, and when they come up, they will be given the ballot papers, and the process continues.
And from there on, it's a simple process of a secret ballot as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Coming to Mr. Achari, sir, I want to ask you this. Nominations can be scrapped as well if the returning officer is not satisfied with the paperwork. Now, what are some of the reasons on which a nomination can be rejected, if you could tell us briefly?
See, there are different grounds given in the law for rejecting a nomination. The first and foremost thing which has to be considered in this context is that the candidate should be eligible to contest as a president, because under the constitution, a candidate who is eligible to be a member of the Lok Sabha. So that is the criterion which has been laid down by the constitution.
Right.
So the candidate should be one who is eligible to be elected to the House of the People.
Right.
That is one condition. Then there are so many other conditions. For example, I'll just spell out one or two. You know, there are 50 proposals and 50 secondaries. If the returning officer finds that any of the signatures of these proposals or secondaries is not found to be genuine, or this returning officer finds that the signature has been obtained by fraud,
Right.
then
That could be grounds for
that is a ground for rejecting the
Right.
nomination.
Right.
There are so many other conditions, but these are some of the most important conditions on which, or grounds on which the nomination will be rejected by the returning officer.
Right. Let me ask you another supplementary here. Of course, you have enough experience of these matters as well. In your experience, do you think that there have been some kind of standout reasons why a nomination per se has been rejected? If you could, do you remember any of those in the past years as well, that nomination was singled out and rejected for a particular reason?
No, nominations can be rejected only on the grounds specified in the law. A returning officer cannot go outside the law.
Right. Right.
So he has to decide the admissibility of a nomination on the basis of the grounds which have been given in the law.
Right.
That is the thing.
So we would expect that the two main contenders, the two big political blocs that have, we don't really expect them to, sort of not fill the proper nomination papers. It would really happen, I would presume, with the random candidates who come on their own, and sometimes the nomination gets cancelled.
Well, I must say that there are, of course, now as my friend on this side has said, that there are about 51 candidates.
Total candidates, yes.
Non-serious candidates,
Yes.
have come.
Yes.
Earlier, many amendments were made in the law. The purpose of these amendments was to keep out the non-serious candidates. After all, the presidential election is a very serious affair, and there is no scope for some kind of clownish exercise or antics.
Absolutely.
So the care was taken to see that these people are kept out. So such amendments were brought in. But even after that, I must say, from my own personal experience, and because in 2007 I was a returning officer, and so from my own personal experience I can say that a large number of people are able to file the nominations.
Right.
And some of them, while coming to file the nomination, they wear crowns and they hold a mace, and some of them look like Hanumanji.
Right.
And that kind of thing,
Adding
and
that comic element to
they lend a comic element to the whole thing.
Right.
And then, some of the nominations which I had scrutinized, I found the mythological characters are the proposers and the secondaries. For example, one very interesting nomination was where the proposers were Ravan, Sita and Ram, all the three put together,
Right.
they were the proposers of.
Right.
So, you can imagine the nature of the people who are filing these nominations.
Right, right. Coming to a more serious topic, sir, coming to you, sir, give us a sense, a viewer's a sense of what we mean when we say, I'll come to you as well on this. First, let me come to Parsa. When we say that different states in the Electoral College have different weightage. Also, in fact, every vote carries a different weightage. Explain to us briefly, if you could, sir, how that really works.
I think technical part he would explain, but basically I think it's because based on proportional representation.
Exactly.
The weightage is given according to the population.
Right.
That is why you find that the UP MLA's vote has got a certain weightage compared to that of the northeastern states.
Right.
That is the management. Proportional representation, it is interesting as to why they have evolved this complicated process, because the presidential vote could have been a simple, like in the Lok Sabha constituency.
Right, but it's not.
It is not.
Right.
That is because I feel, but they must have looked at the whole thing, that to give a fairly good thing, a representation to everybody as such. Because
sort of a middle path.
A middle path. Because if you look at the United States, in the Senate, the big states as well as the small states have the same number of representatives.
Absolutely.
So that doesn't seem to work here. This proportional representation is supposed to balance out between the simple majority thing and also the other complications.
Right. Let me come to you, sir, before I go to Mr. K.V. Prasad. Elaborate a bit for our viewers as well, the concept of proportional representation and how it really works. For example, if you could give an example of how UP has more, carries more weight in votes rather than, say, a Meghalaya or a Nagaland.
Actually, it has been calculated in such a way, as you are aware, proportional representation by means of single transferable vote. It has been done in such a way that the total electors of the MLAs and MPs, there is not much of a difference. For example, total value of votes of all the MLAs of all the states, and it is 5,49,474. And total value of votes of all the MPs, that is also 5,49,408. It comes to, total comes to 10,98,000. So there is not much of a difference.
Right.
It has been made in such a way that it has been doing fine and there is no problem as such.
Right.
Technically.
Let me ask you another question, sir. How difficult and how cumbersome a process is the counting? I think there are about 5,000 electoral votes to be counted. Is that correct?
Actually, total electors is 4,896 to be very precise.
Yeah. So how cumbersome is
it
that
all
process?
depends how many electors they have exercised their vote.
Right, right. And what happens, say for example, I think the Election Commission has given directions for all MPs to come and cast their vote in the capital, New Delhi itself, and the MLAs will go to the state capitals to cast their vote. What happens if, say, an MP is not in Delhi? Is there another way he can cast his vote?
Actually, Election Commission has also given permission to the MPs and MLAs if they want to cast votes in Delhi, or MPs want to cast votes in state capitals, they have to seek prior permission of the Election Commission.
Right.
And once that has been obtained, they can exercise their vote in the state capitals. And even a particular MLA of a particular state can cast their votes in another state also,
Right.
but all with the permission of the Election Commission.
Right. That was very helpful. Do you want to make a point, sir?
I just wanted to ask him, with the single transferable vote, does it mean that we avoid that a person is elected with the minority votes? Because in the simple straight single member constituency thing, a person can get 25% because the rest of the 75% votes are divided among the rest of the candidates. A person with 25% is a victor. Whereas in the single transferable vote, I think you have to cross the 50%.
Right.
Is that the idea?
Yeah.
Right.
One has to cross the. We
Absolutely.
have to see the valid votes first.
Right.
We have to total it and then divided by 2, then plus 1, and whatever the quotient, that will be the.
Right.
And
Right.
also
For the
literally
elected
the
point, sir.
presidential victor is one who has had the maximum number, the majority of the votes.
Yes.
Right.
That's the idea.
That's the idea. I think we have time for one more question, which I think should go to Mr. K.V. Prasad, who's been waiting really patiently. Mr. Prasad, I have this question for you. I know it's not our job to really speculate, and I would refrain from that anyway, and it's too early to say anything about it. But looking at it objectively from your perspective, do you think that the current two-horse race, as some people have called it, could well turn into a cakewalk for a particular candidate? And do you think it might, or do you think it might turn out to be highly interesting, let's say, at some point? What is your reading of the situation?
One thing is clear: there is going to be a contest, and the writing is clear on the wall. What you talked about, whether it's a cakewalk or a two-horse race, yes, there are two contenders in the race, and both are very, very well-known political personalities, both backed by equally eminent political parties on either side of the fence. Yes, if you look at the current number positions, the numbers are stacked in favor of candidate A, who has the support and backing of the ruling coalition. But you really don't know when the election campaign picks up from now and before July 19th, because Mr. Mukherjee has already announced that he's going to embark on a campaign by going out and meeting up his voters and constituents. Starting from the 30th of this month till July 15th, and so would Mr. Sangma. So we'll have to wait and see, because Mr. Sangma is talking of a conscience vote, and if you really go back into history, 1969 was a classic case when conscience vote changed the electoral fortunes of the official candidate, and we had Mr. V.V. Giri elected as the President of India.
Right. Thank you so much, K.V. Prasad, for joining us on the show tonight. I'd also like to thank all my other guests who joined me in the studio, Mr. Ganguly, Mr. Achari, as well as Parsa. Thank you so much for joining us. That's all the time we have from the big picture. Of course, the election is still to happen. The voting happens next month. Of course, people are saying it could be very close, but we'll have to wait and see what really happens. For the time being, of course, we hope we gave you enough material to really understand how the President of India is elected. This is Athar Khan saying goodbye, good night, and thank you so much for watching.